feel like this is all we do anymore.
Right? Just all kinds of weird
live,
stuff
and more live.
All right. Well,
so
MainStreet. Yeah, this is adorable.
It's come out really, really cute. I'm very, very pleased. I still have a little fussing to do with it, but it's all done for all intents and purposes.
Yes,
so,
it's coming out super cute.
I am tickled with how cute it is.
Yeah.
I wasn't so sure about the lights. Got to be honest. I was like, am I going to like this?
They're cute.
But they're really cute.
Yeah. And they're patriotic.
And they're red, white, and blue, which I wasn't aware of until I turned it on. I just thought it was like reflection of thread in the pictures. I wasn't really paying attention. And so the first time I turned them on, I was like, oh, that's cool. So good morning, Sue. So yes, I finished putting all of the embellishments on last night, and like I said, for all intents, it's done. It's just I need to mess with the lights a little bit. So
yeah. So today we aren't actually going to stitch anything live with you.
This time.
This does take some considerable amount of time to actually
stitch one out. Each of the panel sections took about 2 hours to stitch. So
yeah, because there's lots of little bit of trimming.
There's a lot of applique work.
But we are going to walk you through sort of the ins and outs, and we're going to show you guys a couple of different ways to basically do the same thing so that you have options, because we know that everybody wants to have options. I'm going to start off really briefly to talk just a little bit about the sewing side of this. So I know we have a couple people who are doing this traditional machine applique, so no embroidery machine. And if you have done any type of applique before, there isn't anything special about this. So the only thing that's special about this is that some of the pieces are tiny. Yes. So you've got little tiny leaves and thin things and stuff like that. So you're going to be cautious when you're cutting out all of your stuff. My favorite, I brought some goodies over here. Did I not? But I'm like, did I not grab what I wanted? I did finish my coffee this morning. So this is the Baby Lock Fusible Applique. And basically this is, it's what you need when you're going to do traditional machine applique.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really what is so great about this, working on a project like this is the sticky. So this is sticky.
It stays where you put it.
It's sticky like a sticker. And all of those little pieces are so small that you can just peel the paper off and then you can just kind of place them wherever it is that you want them to be, which is really nice. And
do you like to fuse them before you stitch?
So I do usually fuse before I stitch, and especially little stuff. But once I get it up, so I place the whole
everything
block
there,
and then I fuse everything. Yeah, I don't. Even when there's layers, I don't tend to like do one layer and then go back
and then press the next one down.
No, I find that for me, typically every time I've done that, I've been disappointed with some sort of layer. Like there's something about seeing it all come together,
right?
And pressing it all down at the same time that gives me that really nice finished visual.
For anybody who hasn't used this stuff before, the sticky is kind of a temporary. So if you can shift them around, but then once you get it where you want, you can press with an iron and it will become a permanent fuse.
Yes.
So it won't shift on you. So when you go to stitch, it actually stays right where you told it to go.
And I just want to point out that the tag is still incorrect on this.
Is it really?
So if you are
using, been like a year.
I know, right? If you are using this, it says best uses, right? It gives you all of the things. And then underneath it, it says water activated adhesive holds firmly and remoisten to easily reposition on your fabric.
Yeah, that's for a different stabilizer.
This is not water activated. This label is wrong. I feel like I should put a sticker over that says, I
mean, I've gotten phone calls, people that, I don't think I have the right stuff.
I've tried to activate this with water and it's not working.
It's not doing anything.
Because you don't need to. So it's just mislabeled, and I do apologize.
To everybody.
That one, of course, is out of our hands.
Yeah, we can't do anything about it, unfortunately.
No. So
even when we tell them, they still don't want our opinion.
Right? They just don't listen. It's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe nobody has really paid attention to that. It seems like that would be an important thing. So if anybody from Baby Lock is listening, it's still wrong.
It's been like a year.
Yeah, and it's not that this has been here for a year because we order that.
We order it all the time because we go through it very, very quickly.
Right.
But
so yeah, there's that.
So anything else that you want to add with sewing? I mean, even embroidery wise, it was pretty straightforward. The instructions were very well written. All of the details were all right there, at least on the portion that I read. Would you say the same for the sewing?
I would. There's some hand stitching embroidery options on there.
See, now it's your fault. This is not PG rated.
Right. You know, when I was going through the instructions, I don't really think that you would have to hand embroider any of those things. I really think that you could use like a triple straight stitch or a really small zigzag. If you drew out the lines of what you need to be stitching, and then you could just stitch over top of it. I don't think that you would have to feel like you're missing anything by not doing the hand stitching. And you know, when we show you the big one, I'll kind of point out the areas, but it's like the starbursts around the fireworks and things like that. You could easily do just straight stitching on that and not have and it would look beautiful. It would be perfectly fine and no one would even notice.
They tell you to hand put down all of the embellishments. Well, you guys already know that didn't happen. Not even close. There was absolutely nothing I did by hand. So I was very, very careful. You got to be careful with some of these decorative buttons, you know, because if you crack it, there's no fixing that. So you have to be real careful. I did actually hand walk
the machine
on a couple places, but there was absolutely no hand sewing that I did. I used the button tack down stitch everywhere to put things in place, including the buttons, not surprisingly. Not surprisingly. I did change thread a couple times because of what color the button was. I didn't want the thread to stand out too much. But they're very cute. They did a nice job picking the buttons and the add-on pieces. So very, very cute. Good morning, Carolyn. Carolyn and I had a late night sewing conversation the other day.
Camera's like, I'm like, what is that black thing in the back of my head? It's the other camera thing.
Yes, which is not on. So, should we talk screen stuff first or?
Sure. So the first thing that you might want to do is quilt your pieces. So if you're doing regular sewing, this is a good time to either practice some free motion quilting, use some of those decorative stitches that you might have on your machine, or use your walking foot. Having your pieces pre-quilted in this instance does go by a little bit quicker, because then you don't have to start and stop so many times.
It does the entire section instead of working its way around whatever you're doing. So, you know, like this one, I did the outside squares and then I traced that, and it would do a little line and then stop, and jump over here and do a little line and then stop. And by doing the whole thing, it starts in the middle and works its way out, and that's it. So it's much, much faster stitch wise. Time, I mean, literally minutes of difference in the actual stitch time.
Absolutely. And the same goes for regular sewing. When you're doing the regular sewing, like if you just drew some lines and did some cross hatching or some simple stippling, doing that before your project goes on top of that is going to be a lot easier, because again, you don't have to worry about starting and stopping and going through your other embroidery design and things like that. So you can it'll look a little bit more like it's custom quilted. It'll look like somebody did the starting and stopping, and it
did a really good job.
Really good job. And it's a pillow or a wall hanging. So you know, it's super simple to do something like this. Pre-quilting quilts is a little bit more difficult, just because
you have a big backing that you're dealing with, and
and that you still have to tack down later on, and we'll be addressing that later when we do the red, white, and blue quilt.
Yes, we will absolutely be talking about that in a little while. Another month. Probably.
I think I was looking at the fabrics yesterday. They might be releasing middle to the end of this month, and then I think the pattern releases like the middle of March. So soon.
So speaking of red, white, and bloom, we do have let's not lose all. We really need a table.
I know.
Here. Balancing everything on this edge of the machine is really not working. So we do have the thread kits that are available. They are the same colors for both this pillow and for the red, white, and bloom quilt. So we have these here in stock already to go home. They are a 10 thread kit. They're only $30 for the 10 spools. And they will work for both. And you will definitely have enough thread for both. There's nothing that you'll run out of. We do have back in stock.
Oh goodness, I did drink my coffee this morning.
That's okay. That might have been my fault. I did that a minute ago, but I'm probably going to do it again now. Since you
Sorry.
Sorry. So we do have back in stock the CDs, embellishment and fabric kits for the pillow. So if you've been waiting and knew we were out, we do have them back in stock. And a nice smattering of them. So hopefully we won't run out anytime too soon.
All right. So let's talk about pre-quilting on your embroidery machine. I'm going to show you guys on another screen a couple of different ways that you can do it. So you may already know that Kimberbell has some embroidery designs available
for quilting.
So they are purchased on, there's a My
Kimberbell portion of their site. So if you go to kimberbell.com and you click on the quilting, it'll take you to that. It's not like you have to search for it or anything like that. They are linked, so it's really easy to find. And they have them for like seasons. They did some for the Love Notes quilt when that came out, but you know, they've got Halloween and different pieces as well. So
yes, Pam,
yes, there absolutely will be. And if you have prepaid, that portion is included in our quilt kit. So it is the fabric, the design with instruction book, and the embellishment kit all in one if you are looking for that. And if you haven't done it already but would like to, you can still go to our website and put a reservation hold for a kit so that we'll have one ready
for the whole thing.
Or pay for the whole thing if you prefer.
Both of options are on there.
So and on our website, there's a
sewing and or embroidery.
Either way. Yep. On the left-hand side, which doesn't look like left-hand side where my hand is. On the left-hand side, it says Laboo Store. You can click on that and it'll take you right to there. So you can take care of that. Of course, you can always call the store as well.
And we did not put the thread kit in there yet.
Yes, we didn't get around to that.
We are actually working on a real website.
Yeah,
that has
we're
a store.
attempting to. So we haven't been paying attention to the older ones so much.
Anything else in there yet? But
hopefully, a little bit more friendly for both parties, us and you.
Yeah.
So it's I think a little overwhelming.
Yes, the embellishment kit for the quilt is different from the pillow. Yep, they're two completely different quilts. And while some of the fabrics are the same, there is
actually specific fabrics that were created for the quilt.
Yeah, there's a red, white, and bloom fabric line coming out, and that will coincide with.
And I'm sure none of you will be surprised to hear we bought the whole line, so we will have all of it here.
Yes.
So and the red, white, and bloom kits, with the exception of those fabrics that are specific, are actually pretty much all cut and ready to go.
Yeah.
So
we should be able to rock and roll.
We should be hopefully ahead of the game on that one too.
Oh goodness, now we're both doing it.
Yeah, I think I need that Mountain Dew or something.
I'm really awake, guys. I don't know what's going on. All right, so let's flip over to this camera right here.
All right, so we're going to go to a view of the Solaris here. This is just the screen. We chose this because it's much easier for you guys to see things on a bigger screen. And then also there are additional options when you are in one of the larger sets. So your 9.5 by 14 machines and your 10.5 by 16s have some additional options in them that we're going to really quick breeze through and show you how you can use that as well.
So everybody who has an embroidery machine, you're going to start off by basically selecting the embroidery option on your machine. That might slide, so you don't want. And on this particular machine, where we find our USB stick happens to be on this little pocket page here. And I'm going to select the USB stick. And we're going to
you want the quilting
designs first. So Lisa's got them in folders.
So
here.
I did purchase the quilting designs. This first set here is the borders, and this one here is the actual backgrounds for the pieces. I screwed that up a couple of times, hit the wrong button, so I finally figured it all out.
All right, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that they can see them. So here you can see there are a bunch of different sizes, and when you're working with your pattern, the instructions are going to give you a size.
Yep. It is at the end of that piece.
Yep.
So you'll have to go through. So when you get to the first quilt pattern, at the end, it will tell you the trimming instructions. So once you've stitched everything, it says now cut it down to this. And for this one, they were either 4.5 by 8.5 or 6.5 by 8.5. So depending upon what your finished size is how you select that background quilting piece. If you have purchased these from Kimberbell, there is actually a full instruction page of how to pick which one. So if it's, there's a chart that says, if it says this, you want this one. And it's very, very easy to follow. So for a 6.5, we want these, where to go? 6 by 8. Yep. And so you can see that. And
then the design
ends up on screen. So this is how I actually did all of these pieces. I brought in the quilting pattern first, and then I hit the lovely add button. So rather than hooping everything twice and lining things up after the fact, I went ahead. So Main Street's top right. And they're all on there because I just dumped. So you got to hit PES. So
that one says 6 by 10. Okay.
So you can see now that that's literally overlaid on top of the first one, and it's centered it. So they're both literally right where they're supposed to be. You could wiggle a little bit if you wanted and move the house down a hair. But I didn't. I left them all the same and it worked fine. I actually didn't have to move anything for any of the pieces. They just lined up right then and there. So once I'm trimming later, I'm literally trimming on that line for the quilting, and it just made it so easy because everything that I needed was right in front of me.
So, and you can kind of see over in the side here that it has the quilting design first. So that's the design that's going to stitch first. And then it has the embroidery design picture over here. So that's the next embroidery design that it's going to stitch.
So I would like to, mention that doing the quilting, you do have to have that hoop size large enough to do the whole piece. So,
so this one is asking for basically a
6.5 by 8.5, which means you need a 9-inch
or an 8 by 12 or
8 by 12 would work.
Yeah. Yep. Because the 6 by 10 would not.
Correct. 6 by 10, even though it says 6 by 10 design, with the quilting pattern in there, it will not work.
Because that makes it 6.5. And you don't want to shrink it because then
everything doesn't add up to one another.
That's right.
So just as a note, when you're doing this, make sure that you do have
plenty of
hoop space
right.
to put them in.
And stabilizer and fabric. Yep. So you might want to, if you are not familiar with this, you might want to pull the stuff up in the machine first
and see what you have
room to make
wiggle
sure
with.
That you have a design or a hoop size that's going to work for you. Because
I think I ended up using a 7 by 12, so I was
sure.
saving a little bit on stabilizer because my 8 by 8 wouldn't work.
Right.
Yes. So excuse me. So, but it was so easy. So that's exactly how I did it. Also mention, you want to hit the needle, go ahead into embroidery and show what I skipped. So you can see there on the right-hand side that has that squaring stitch. That is literally going to be where you place your batting. And these designs have the batting trimmed out of the seam allowance, which is really nice. So you don't have that extra bulk when you go to sew them together. So that is all built into here as well, which is great. And good morning, somebody's texting me. So let's go ahead and skip through. You went. Yep, there we go. I know. So that's going to tack down your batting. And let's go through the quilting.
So, and then trim. So just talk them through the
So once you attached your batting, it's going to have you tack down the fabric itself, which you need. It's going to be oversized based on the cutting instructions.
Yep.
All right. So that's going to tack that down. That was the first one was a placement. Second one is a tack down. Do you really need the placement line? Probably not, but
it's there.
They've made it dummy proof. So there you go. So the next one is, of course, going to be the quilting. I personally chose to have thread that just blended into the back, because there was so much going on in the pillow itself. I didn't want even more going on with that quilting. So I personally chose just to use that navy color that blended in. I know because you guys have come in here already and gone, well, I want it to be, I want it to show up more. absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you see the sample, that is just the direction I personally chose.
And so because we haven't really done this before, let's go back to the beginning here. So we are at our first.
That's the first.
There we go. We're at the first design.
Yep.
All
so
right.
I have my stabilizer only in the hoop.
Yes. And
All
what
right.
stabilizer did you use?
I use no-show mesh so that it doesn't stiffen up or be, I wanted a flowing pillow, not super, super stiff pillow. So I did use no-show mesh. If you only have Fusible, it's okay. You're wasting a little couple pennies based on the Fusible, but either one will absolutely work, even though we won't actually be fusing.
So placement.
Placement for the batting is first. So you're going to get a stitch on there. You're going to cover that stitch with your batting, and then it's going to tack the batting down, which is the piece that's on screen right now. Then you're going to trim the excess from the outside. So anything that's on the outside of that, we're going to go ahead and trim off. And so then the next color.
We're trimming the batting, basically the seam
allowance is
out,
we're trimming it out.
Right. So you can expect that there'll be about, a quarter of an inch, half an inch around the outside that you're going to be trimming out. So that's totally normal.
Yep.
Trim as close to that line as you can get.
Yes. And then this is going to show you where to put the fabric. So it's going to give you a placement line for your background piece of fabric.
Which you would have pre-cut based
on the cutting instructions at the beginning.
Right.
Yes. And it does not give you instructions for cutting batting. That's not part of the fabric or anything. So depending on what piece you're using, your cutting off section could of course vary. So this is going to show you where to put your background fabric. And then you're going to actually tack that fabric down. Leave all of the excess after that.
Right.
You don't want to trim anything at this point. So we're just going to leave it just as is. So once we have that tacked down, we're going to go ahead and stitch the quilting stitch. Again, I chose a blending color. Choose whatever you would like by all means.
And so don't trim the fabric.
Do not trim the fabric off. Leave everything there. The only trimming that you're going to do
it's Hayden, is trimming the batting. Hey, Tony, can you let Hayden in? Yeah, I thought I heard him. Thank you. So now you've got your piece is quilted.
I'm all quilted. I'm ready to put some stuff on it.
Right.
So then we get this, which this one is actually a placement line for the design if you are lining up with fabric without having quilted. So I skipped this. I did not stitch it. If you do, it's going to end up right on one of your previous lines. But there is absolutely no reason to stitch it and have more thread in there than you need. So I skipped this, which is color number 1 of the design. And then this is color number 2. This would be tacking down your fabric. Guess what? We've already done that. So I skipped this one too.
But you could definitely
you could absolutely still stitch it. There would be no problem. It's going to go pretty much right on top of what you already have.
Yeah. If you're not comfortable moving between the colors, you can stitch it and it won't matter.
And again, to get where we are, we hit the needle plus minus button that allows us to pop around our design however we would like. So again, I skipped colors 1 and 2 of the design itself because I had already done that by doing the pre-quilting. You can do whatever you would like, of course, but I found that to be easier and I didn't want extra lines on my fabric. So then we start with the actual applique steps. And there's a lot of applique steps. So just stitch time, this says on this machine that it's going to take 47 minutes. When you consider all of the trimming and all of the ins and outs and changing of thread colors and all of that, it took me approximately 2 hours for each of these blocks, just roughly. Some were a little less, but roughly 2 hours. So don't feel like you're, holy crap, I'm way behind. You're not. It is just the way of applique, and there's a lot of applique on here. So there is some leather that is in there that will be used as applique. I would like to point out that all of those tack down stitches are the final stitch. So when you get to a piece that you are placing leather somewhere, that thread is going to show. So make sure whatever thread that you have decided to place in there is going to be the piece that you would like. So the one that we have on screen right now, there is no leather in the applique, but there is some vinyl, and then there's some add-on pieces that are leather. So this particular piece right here, this little curved line is the one place, and I'll show pictures of, we'll show it on camera later. I raised my embroidery foot when I got to that point. This is like the only piece of instruction, quote unquote, that wasn't in the instructions. And it's literally folding leather, so it's higher.
It's very thick.
It's very thick, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't get my foot caught and jam up those threads there. So this particular piece is the house with the swing on the front porch. I did raise the foot, and whenever I do that, I put a little sticky note and just stick it on the corner of my machine. And that reminds me that I've done something to my settings, so that I remember later on when I'm like, why is that stitching weird? Oh yeah, I raised my foot. So I always make kind of a mental note, and that sticky note is my mental note that I made an adjustment so that I can remember to put it back.
Cool. All right. So, and then if you want to browse through, you basically have placement and trim lines for all of the different pieces of the design. So we're still at the house.
Applique.
Yeah,
there's
you
the
can
door.
see
There's the window.
There's the windows. That's
the like columns on the house.
Yep.
Satin pieces.
You
Here's
can
the
see
front
there's
door
some satin
satin
stitches. Yep. Doorknob. There's the trim on the top of the house, maybe.
Yep.
Outlines.
Yep. Satin stitches on that.
Yep,
And then there's another, there's a lot of satin stitches and a lot of applique pieces. And then just decorative pieces. So there is vinyl for the windows. So you basically stitch on top of the window satin stitches when you go through there. That stitch right there that you can barely see, there's little tack lines in that shape there. That is your tack down for where you're going to put those leather pieces for your pennant. And then you actually sew them upside down and then fold them over on themselves and sew them again on top of it, which is why it's so thick. So we have all that fabric and then 2 layers of leather that we're sewing over top of. So that's why I ended up raising the foot there. That's the only place that I did that on, even with all of the layers that are everywhere. That's the only place that I felt the need to do that.
And then you can see the corn and your fireworks.
So that corn is actually got some fringe in it. I fringed the first one. I mean, I followed the steps like I was supposed to. I only fringed the first piece. I actually liked it better personally unfringed. But since I did one, I'm probably going to go back and do the others too. But fringe, it does say in your notes to change that bobbin thread to something that you can see, so you know which ones to clip. But again, the instructions were very, very clear. The hard part on that one is remember to changing it the bobbin thread back. So if you happen to see the back of mine, you might realize I didn't always remember to do that.
It's hard to do that.
It is hard. You know, I'm sure you guys are all the same way. You hit go and you walk away and you do something else. And then you come back and you forgot really what you were doing. And you just hit go again for the, change the thread and hit go. Well, that's exactly what I did. And so there's a lot of purple or black thread on the back of mine, but that's okay.
Yep, it happens. And then are any tips for doing the little eyelets? Did you do anything special?
I did not. Again, I did those in the navy blue so that they blended in. And then I used that wonderful hole punch that we have here to pop those open. The instructions tell you to use scissors and, clip through and then turn a circle to widen it and then go to the back and repeat. Yeah, that's too much like work for me. So I like the hole punch.
Yeah, we do have that really great OESD hole punch.
It is
and
fantastic.
we do have some in stock. So if you haven't already gotten yours yet, you can still do that. And then we're back to the beginning. So
again, it's all very straightforward. Lots of applique, lots of satin stitches covering up applique. But just as like I said, anytime that you are doing a vinyl or a leather, those stitches are going to show. So make sure whatever you have in there is the color that you would like to tack that down with, because it's, and the felt, as a matter of fact. So,
all right. So, that's using Kimberbell, quilting designs. And her designs are like, they're up there. She's got all of the information exactly.
Like 6 pages
It's
of
a
instructions.
lot of instructions, right? It can feel a little bit overwhelming, but essentially,
when you first sit down, you're like,
oh my God, right? This shouldn't be that hard. It's not hard.
It's not.
Just,
it just was like,
it's a lot of words. She does a lot of words. She's wordy.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to have too much than not enough.
Right. Words and pictures. And so for people who read and then people who skim through the pictures, you should both be okay because
there is
ample,
a lot of information on there. So.
Yes. So if you have a fancy machine like this, you have some quilting designs that are sort of built into the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So we can use those. So I'm going to talk about really quickly. And again, this is a real quick, it's like, we're not taking a ton of time here.
Yeah. We're not attempting to teach you how to do this per se.
Right. But you could obviously replay this to get the steps. Because I will verbally talk about what we're doing. So if we're going to use our either our IQ designer or our design center. So if you are on
brother or a baby lock.
A brother or a baby lock, and you will have this on a dream, a destiny, a stellar, altair, a meridian,
Solaris,
a Solaris, a Luminaire 1 or 2.
Yep.
So there are a bunch of different machines that would have this feature. How many background fills you have will vary based on the machine that you have and the upgrades that you have.
And also if you have PE 11,
yes,
or even 10 has some, 11 has more. You can actually create from these background fills. They are built into the software as well, so you could use software if you have that too.
Absolutely. So we're gonna open this guy up here, and there's a couple of choices here. So we could do this as fancy as Kimberbell did, but in this instance, what I'm gonna just recommend is that you use a really thin batting, and we're gonna have some batting in our seams, and we're just not gonna worry about it. So we're
it's
gonna
a pillow. It doesn't matter.
Pillow, yes. So the original design, so we knew that was getting cut down to like 6 by 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can pick a bigger hoop, or we could pick our 6 by 10 hoop and just fill it. So, or we could draw a box. You have lots of choices. So this guy right here is the shapes tool. And in our shapes tools, we have boxes and we also have hoops. And so I'm going to just select the hoop here, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a hoop. You could pick any hoop that you want to pick, but I'm going to pick the 6 by 10 hoop. So it's right here. And down at the bottom here on this particular machine, there's a little thing that says offset. What it's going to do is it's going to make the design a little bit smaller than the actual size of the hoop, just so that it doesn't go all the way to the outside. And we're just going to leave that exactly where it is. And I'm going to say, okay. And so I have a big red box on my screen here that is showing the hoop size. And then this box here is my properties box. And I'm going to select the properties button here. And I've got some choices. So this one would do a stipple, and this one is all of the fun stitches. So we'll pick this design, and then I've got a bunch of different designs to show here. So I could pick whatever I wanted from this screen. I think this one's kind of cute. It kind of looks like flag pieces. So we're going to select OK. From this page here, we could select a color. It defaults to a different color each time you do this. So I'm just going to leave it at the default thing, and I'm going to say OK. Now, I want to fill in my box, which is no longer red, but that's okay. I'm going to take my paint can, and what that's going to do is it's going to fill in the whole box and not just paint it. So I'm going to tap right there, and you can see I now have a box full of designs.
Box of boxes.
A box of boxes. Yeah, that's my Boxo design. And then I'm going to hit the next button. And on this particular screen here, I can pick and choose some things that I like about this design. I'm going to make this bigger because I don't want the quilting to be that small. So I'm going to actually go all the way up to 200. I don't think we need a ton of background quilting in here. And you're going to see that's going to change. And I'm not really going to touch anything else in here except for this button right here, because I want this to be a little bit more like a traditional quilted design. And this is how many times the machine is going to stitch something. So I'm going to go to the thin, which is really a single stitch. And I'm going to select OK. And then I'm going to hit the set button. It's going to take me out of this screen and into the embroidery design. And here I have my design.
So at this point, you can either stitch it and then go back and do all of your placements and everything. Because as you saw, when we pulled in the embroidery design, it gives you the lineup and everything so that you know where to place all of your goodies. Or you can hit that add button and put it right on top of it. So, top right. I might have done this a time or two.
Times, yeah. And so
there's that same design we had before, and you can see that with the different quilting behind it, we literally are ready to rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. And so there I've put, and again, the quilting design comes first, and then I've got my embroidery design. So that's how I can use the built-in fill stitches that are on my machine to do some quilting. There's other ways that we can do this.
There are
too.
other ways.
So I'm going to show you one other quick way here. And so I'm going to pull up that design. I'm going to pull up the design first this time. And got to remember where I'm going.
So many buttons and so many folders.
And so now I have this on my screen, and I don't have any background quilting out there yet, but I'm going to hit my edit button. And I do have a couple of tools over here that I can use. So I can use this button here. And the thing that you got to notice about this is that what it does is it quilts all the way around the background, but we have this line here, right? So that's definitely going to be a problem if I want to do it like this. However, it takes a second.
It's thinking.
It is. It is. Oh, the inside button is in here.
It says too big, too big.
Let's take that out.
So the button that we were talking about is actually called a stamp. And that allows you to stamp on the inside or the outsides or both of your design. Because
just putting the fill stitch in, and you all are going to do this, right? Because everybody thinks that, right? You think it's just going to fill all of the whole background. But the design, it
fills from the outside.
Right. It fills on the outside of the design. And since you have that squaring stitch, you don't want that to be in that spot. And so here I have a button. I'm in my stamps. I didn't point that out. So this is the stamp button here. So I'm going to select this option here. And I'm going to tell it to go on the inside. And so now I have all of these little stamps, right? So I've got all these little circles and things like that. And then I'm going to tell it that I want it to save to my memory.
Do you do this very often? This way?
Sometimes, only because I did that. This is how I did on Love Notes.
Okay.
And then I just erased the design pieces that I didn't want or didn't fill in around the areas that I didn't want because I already had the embroidery design
on there
on the stick.
Right.
And then I go into my design center or IQ designer.
Whichever one you happen to have.
Whichever one you happen to have. And I'm going to go in here, and this is that little button that looks just like that stamp button that we used. And you can see my little picture. All right, and now I kind of have an outline of what I was using before. So now if I wanted to just fill something into the background part of this, what I can do is I can take my properties box again, and I could find a design. And I can take my paintbrush and I can tap right in the center of this. And then you can see I've got
around.
Yep, I've got my background. And if I wanted it to extend a little bit past this, I could put a second box around there. I could still go and add a second shape because my machine is really smart. And I could pick that.
Do you ever feel like it's smarter than you sometimes?
Sometimes. And so there you can see if you wanted to see like where that 6x10 hoop would actually be at. So then I could put fill out in the, I have to touch it first. I could put the fill back out there. So then I could do that.
Fill in the extra space.
I could fill in the extra space and not have to worry about anything. I do have like a little line running through here. And if I zoom in on this a little bit, you can see. So there is a little line running through here. And this is where that paintbrush comes in handy because I can just go over here and I can just paint right over that line. And then that makes it does. It disappears. So that outside piece now is continuous. It goes all the way to the outside, and it won't stop and give me basically two separate designs. So this is
that's what we don't want. We don't want it to stop.
I don't want it to stop
because that's going to make knots on the back, and it's going to take twice as long.
Yes, absolutely. And so that is how you would get rid of that design. That's where that eraser button is really good for. But this is how I quilted my love notes after I was finished. I just used the original design, made the stamp, and went back in. And then went back in, and because I had all of those little lines, so if I really wanted to do fancy quilting on this, I have all of those parts, so I could put
go in and do whatever you want.
That's right. I could custom quilt the inside of the house if I wanted to, because I have all of the lines.
Well, you must have a lot of time on your hands.
There's not a lot in this one, and I don't think that I would actually do that on this.
But on the love notes, there's the envelopes, there's the mailboxes. You could totally have fun with that, and really
those big typewriter pieces.
Yep, the big pieces, you could really add in quite a bit of fun,
right? Because you can get the inside without actually having to trace it. Before we got the upgrade,
we didn't have the ability to do the insides.
We didn't have inside, so anytime we wanted to do an inside, we had to trace it and draw it.
Trace it.
Yep. So
which unfortunately we're very good at this point.
Yes, you should get better at it.
Way easier doing it this way.
Yeah. And then
all right.
Again, you just can go through the pieces, and you can see on the screen here that there's like a little itty bitty break where I didn't erase it. And I'm just going to show you on the embroidery side just so that you could see. It did a pretty decent job of filling that all in, and it didn't make it too, but there's like little breaks there.
That you didn't go that far because you were off, it was off the screen.
Yep.
So at this point you would just add in your design again, and then embroider.
Whoops, one too far. Add, and then I can just plop. And again, right now my background quilting is first.
Right.
So I can just go back in, touch the button. It doesn't like my hand.
It does not, does it?
No,
what did you do?
I don't know.
She broke it.
I broke it. Yeah.
She broke it. All right. But anyways, that is how you do background quilting.
Sometimes that happens.
So, oh, look, there you are.
There I am.
Reflecting in the screen. Isn't that cool? It's like, did you change the camera?
I did, right? It's purple now. Much here. So, and of course, I lost my design because I didn't save it.
Right.
But anyways, I would have had the quilting design up
on screen, and then just go to your USB and
pulled up the other stuff, and that's exactly how I would have done it.
So it is a few steps.
Yes.
But really cool to be able to do all of that and make those choices and say, well, I want it to look like this. So not discounting Kimberbell's designs at all. They do a really nice job. They're very, very cute.
Right.
But just so you guys know, there are other options out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's nice to know that you have different choices. But those are a couple of different ways that you can do the quilting. You could, Lisa used no-show mesh. You could certainly use like a water soluble underneath there so that you wouldn't have to worry about any of that. The only disadvantage of using water soluble is that if at any point you hit anything with your steam iron, it gets a little...
It gets sticky.
It does. It gets a little icky.
It gets icky. That's exactly it. It gets icky. So I'm just...
She's flipping it around.
I'm flipping it around. I had it set, so I was playing with the lights.
She's flipping it off.
I'm flicking it on is what. So here is this adorable pillow, and it just came out super, super cute. I don't remember which side my thingy-majigger's on. It's on your side. Can you flip a button?
I can.
It's all the way in the corner. So you have flashing options, you have slow flashing options, or you have on. I like the on. And as we said, they're actually red, white. So here's red, we've got white and blue. I just thought it was like reflecting off of the fabrics. Didn't actually dawn on me that they were different color lights. So I was pleasantly surprised when we did that. That firehouse over there, this one here, it took a few minutes to stitch. There is a lot of stitching and a lot of applique work in there. So the flag here and the bunting here were a little interesting. So I'm glad I actually read the instructions, because I was like, I wouldn't have done it that way. But they have you actually iron that to the fusible side of the white glitter, and then trim and then sew it on. So the white glitter gives it substance so that it's not a weak flag. It's a nice, and it's stiff. I don't know how else to say it. Try to come up with another word, but stiff is the one. So that was kind of fun. All of the twine pieces that are on here are oversized. So it makes it easier to tie the bows and whatnot. And then you can just trim them down once you get there. So you will have excess and trim that down after the fact. There is absolutely nothing on this pillow that I did by hand. Everything was attached or done with my, I had scissors in my hand, but there's no hand sewing, or it wouldn't be on here. So if you are like me and really don't like doing that, be very, very careful. These buttons are absolutely adorable, but they are breakable. So, if you have your foot clamping too hard down on one side, sometimes I was literally holding it because there was no foot, no place to have it grab appropriately. I just held it, took the foot right off the machine. No foot, just sewed on a button. And all of these different pieces were put on with a button tack down stitch. So on your buttonhole menu, there's a circle with a dashed line through it. That just gives you that little zigzag, which is your button attachment stitch. And that's what I used. So the buttons themselves, but also the twine. This is actually attached by the clips themselves. It's not sewn on to there, but all of the buttons, and then the extra twine and things. The pillows, no, those aren't pillows. This whole thing is a pillow. The balloons are stitched first on water soluble. I was a little confused. There's mylar and the glitter polka dot.
Oh yeah.
And I was confused. I'm like, where does this glitter polka dot stuff go?
Oh, they're very cute.
And so I paid attention when I was stitching them and made sure that there was actually glitter in each of the circles when we were stitching. But then I tacked those down. For this, you'll want to tack your twine down first so that your balloons are on top of them, so you don't have twine out of the way.
That totally makes sense.
But it was very easy. It just, all of it's just time. There was nothing that was difficult on this one. There wasn't anything that I was just like, holy crowd. There wasn't anything on this one. And I have gotten to the point where I'm just like, whoa, I'm going to come back to that tomorrow. There wasn't anything. It was just time on this one. And I'm very, very pleased with how things turned out and how simple they actually were. It's, So let's talk about this cute little quilt.
Yeah, because you did that a little different.
I did. Can you imagine there was somewhere I didn't follow the instructions? So in the instructions, it wants you to quilt the quilt, which I did. I actually have quilting lines through the quilt itself. And then it wants you to put the backing on, sew with the 1/4 inch seam and leave a little opening and turn it. And then there's that hand sewing thing that it wanted you to whip stitch that closed. Well, you guys probably already know that upon reading that, I was like, yeah, no. So here is my quilt. You can kind of see the stitches in the middle of the quilt itself. What I did instead of just sewing that back down and doing all of that, I did it more like the hot pads and the me in your hoop, the numbers, the paper piecing in the hoop. So I actually have an envelope fold. So I took 2 pieces I ended up with just excess of the panel pieces in my background because it doesn't really show. So that didn't matter. And I took 2, folded them in half, and then overlapped and then did the sewing. So all I had to do was turn through that big opening and then I was done. And then I did, you can see there's top stitching so that it has a nice crisp edge to it. That took me maybe half an hour. It wasn't bad. Had I had to hand sew it, it probably wouldn't be done yet. So
we have a couple questions. Yeah. Do you also use fusible interfacing on each block in addition to the no-show mesh? So I think if you're pre-quilting, it could be optional, but it's definitely not necessary. If you are not pre-quilting them, I would definitely use.
Yeah. So her instructions will tell you to do a fusible backing on all of your pieces. There are a lot of stitches, so you need to be prepared and make sure you don't want to do 2-hour block and then have puckers,
right?
Because that's no fun. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily absolutely necessary, but I would do it because for the little bit of money that it would be to put that fusible on, it's way better than not being happy with your block afterwards.
Yeah.
There are satin stitches. There's very large satin stitches, which can pull very easily if that fabric is not prepared to absorb that many stitches. So, but between my no-show mesh, my batting, and that fusible, I'm definitely covered, and there's nothing anywhere that gave me any issues. So, and that is what I prefer. I would rather overdo and have it come out exactly like I want than why didn't I do that?
Did you use, and also it might depend on your batting. So, there's a ton of different battings on the market. What batting
I use the embroidery batting.
So did you use
I didn't use Kimberbell's, but it's just like,
there are a variety of different choices these days.
I think I have, R&K Floriani's version is what I had at home, but that's the thickness that I used.
So this is the Kimberbell project batting. It's 19 inches by 3 yards. It is, her words, 8515 cotton poly blend, and it does have scrim in it. So it's the scrim part that gives this a little bit more stability so that it doesn't sort of fall apart. It's fairly thin though.
Yes, it's not going to add like massive quilting depth.
Right.
So when you're bulking up and doing all of those layers, that's not really an issue. And we've got a couple other options here to show you.
Right. That one is not fusible. So these two options are fusible. And so here's the thing about fuses and fusibles, right? So don't use a double fusible. So if you're using one of these that has glue on it,
you don't then also want to fuse.
You don't want to fuse the woven to it first and then fuse it on. You won't get, one of those is not going to fuse well, and you will get like bubbles. So don't use a double fusible if you are actually using them to actually fuse. Does that make sense?
You can use it if you're not actually fusing. If that's what I have, so this is what I'm going to put in there.
Right.
But if you're actually fusing, you're going to have the best results with only one layer of actual fusing.
Yes. And so again, depending on the batting that you're using, the Kimberbell batting, definitely you would want to use your woven inner facing, which if you want the Kimberbell stuff is
we
called
do have that fusible backing,
and it's 12 inches by 5 yards. So we do have that. This is also the same, very similar to
your Shape Flex, your Easy Tees. OESD has one too. I don't remember the name of it, but it's
fusible woven.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's called fusible woven. Yep.
Yes.
So there's lots of options. It's just a matter of, first of all, what do you have at home already? Because we all like to use what we have, but also have many options for you here if you don't already have them.
And then,
but I definitely, for me, I would highly recommend using that extra layer just because there's so many stitches and it's way too much work to have it not turn out
flat and pretty. And then did you quilt the border pieces before stitching them together?
So, sort of. So the actual borders, I did use the quilting stitches from Kimberbell for the borders as well. So there's 2 different sets. There's the background quilting for the square part, and then there's these different border pieces. So did I sew them together? I sewed these pieces together and then quilted them, and then I sewed it onto the pillow front itself. So yes, I sewed them together first, but I didn't sew them to the extra pillow part first. So her border patterns also have a seam allowance built into them,
Mhm.
so that that extra batting is not in those seams either. But that one I had to read the instructions a couple times because I was like, wait, you want me to do? I just assumed that each of those pieces were going to have, you know, a
Like a
design that
trim
would
and-
fit it,
yeah.
you know, that fit that particular square, but it's not. It's you go by the width of it. So this one was going to finish 3 inches, and this one was going to, the red one was going to finish 1. So that is the piece that you choose, and then you just choose the basically the longest hoop size that you have and stitch as much as you possibly can, and then rehoop. The instructions for that were very clear. I had absolutely no issues, having never done it before. Once I got started, I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But upon reading them the first time, I was like, that's not what I was expecting. So, but it was very, very simple. So I followed
You have to exactly
physically
what
sit
she
down
says.
and do what she says. So I sewed according to, I did follow her layout of which pieces. All of the cutting for this was in the original cutting. So it was a piece of cake. They're all the same size. So it was really easy to figure out which ones were which. And, you know, so it said to put this one and then this one. So I sewed 1/4 inch seam, all of those together, and made the entire strip. And then I quilted that with the border patterns that they provided. Sort of provided, that they made, I bought.
Yeah. So she sewed the little pieces to make the length of her border.
Yep.
And then quilted the length of the border basically as a
single piece. And as I have a large hoop, I ended up doing 2 14s and a 12, and it came out perfect. So that's, I was like, well, that worked well.
It's like you planned it.
I almost like I planned that. And then that red border, there's no piecing to, that is just basically a width of strip. And you are, again, did the same thing. I did the 2 14s.
Yep.
Followed the instructions, and everything came out really nice. There is a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides for sewing them together. And it was like this was not hard. It was just time.
Yep.
And a lot of fun. The trimming of the leaves, I may have grumbled a little bit on.
Maybe
it was just kind of
as fun.
It wasn't.
Took a lot of time.
It just, well, they're really close, and so unless you have really tiny scissor tips, it was hard to get into some of those spots. I think I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of raw edge applique. I prefer the beautiful satin stitch piece on there. Of course, that would have been many more stitches and hours of stitching, but that's my personal preference. But once I got them all done, I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. It actually looks leafy. So it turned out pretty good.
I know when I first saw the original one of this, I kept thinking, I really hope those leaves aren't leather.
Right?
Because I was like, oh my God, that is going to be so tiny. But it's the felt.
The clock face was a little, you know,
it's pretty small and circular.
So the black leather, I was very pleased. It has a black backing. So when you trim the tire, there's no white edge.
Yeah.
But the other ones all have a white back. So when you're trimming it, you can see that edge because there's no way to prevent it. We ran into the same thing.
We talked about that a lot.
We talked about it a lot over there.
Yeah.
The red and that edge that you get. So, you know, I was trying to be super careful and make sure my lines were very, very straight because I knew that they were going to show because there's this white edge on there. So please be careful with that. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was looking at I was just thinking, I remember us having that conversation about the bird and the teal.
The bird and the teal and the red and the hearts. And so on here, we've got a gas pump, we've got a truck, you've got that clock, and they all are going to show that white edge. Just be careful and be aware. And again, your firecrackers that are actual piecing, they are 2 different colors of glitter. Whatever you tack that down with is what's going to show. There is no extra stitch or anything, which is the same way as all of those leather pieces. So just pay attention because you also can't really take them out. There's holes there. It's not like fabric that kind of puts itself back together. There's
True.
those holes are holes. So make
Mhm.
sure that you have the thread in that you actually want in there. Man, my nose itches this morning. Sorry.
Isn't that you're gonna kiss a fool?
Yeah. Evidently. It itches a lot lately, so that explains a lot. But yeah, so the button, I mean, I didn't really veer from anything. I thought this was kind of cool. The flag that sits on top of the fire station and then the banners that are on top of the general store, you get choices of what flag you would like to put on. I, of course, chose the American flag because that's where I live, but you know, this is available all over the place. And then you have 2 buntings to choose from. So the other one has blue that I chose. You can pick which one you like. You only need one of those. But you just, you know, you get a little bit of choice, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah.
I
think that's about it. Right?
I don't really, like I said, these banners are the ones that I'm talking about right here. Oops, my bad, wrong direction. It's hard to do this backwards. You'd think one of these days we'd get the hang of it, but it's just, so these banners right here are red leather, and they are actually sewn faced up, pointing the roof first, and then it tacks that down. Then you flip them over and retape them, and it tacks those down, flipped over. So you have a folded edge at the top, which is very pretty. No yawning.
Sorry.
It looks really, really nice. That is where I raised my foot. I didn't need to raise it a ton, but I did raise it. So just be careful. And okay. So I was just reading comments and I was confused by what that I thought it was a question and it wasn't. So Sarah's taking care of that. So your twine pieces are over large. Don't think that you're doing something wrong. Make them the length that you would like and then trim off the excess. They're over large, so it's easier to work with them. And then, you know, trim your bow ties and whatnot after you've done that. And the ribbon or the twine going up into the balloons, I liked how it didn't look really tight in the pictures. So I attempted to do that too, so that they're not just like not like kite strings. They're a little bit loose and flowy, which I personally thought was pretty. So I tried to copy that. Let's talk about the lights for just a second. So there are instructions in the very last page. You don't want to put the lights in until after everything is sewn in.
You want me to show Lindy a close up of that?
Sure.
Would that be easier?
That might be easier.
All right. So
I'm stuck. There we go. Here we go. So here's my lights. They are on, which helps see them a little bit. So they are just this long string and you have to weave them in between each piece. This is going to drive me crazy. So Sarah and I were discussing some different ways to maybe keep everything in place versus having all this craziness back here. My first thought was, well, I'll just throw some tape on there and we'll keep them in place where I want. But Sarah raised a very good point. Have you ever had some fabric that you bought, like a fat quarter that had an adhesive wrap around it, and that adhesive just doesn't come off? So I don't want to have that issue later on. What you're going to do is you're going to make it a point, and then you will push that point through. And on the other side, you'll have that whole piece again. What they want you to do is to flatten that piece. So open it up and flatten it so that you have a larger front. And this is where I said I didn't spend a ton of time last night. So you want to have kind of a mess, if you will, at the front. So you want to have a larger top so that it can't come through later on. What I keep seeing, and I've played with some of them I just shoved through and then kept going. So I don't have them all actually flattened. I just maybe turned them a little bit so that they would stay in place
and not pop right back
and
out.
not pop right back out. I'm going to go back through and make them pretty. But the problem is of course I have this excess on the back that allows it to move forward and back.
Right.
That drives me batty. So I want them to lie flat. So I think I might try the Fusible on the back.
Yeah.
And just kind of lay everything down in place. And once I get it, put a square of either no-show mesh that's fusible that I can sit down, or like the soft stitch kind of thing. So this mess here is what I'm talking about. So I don't want that to be able to just pop right through. You need it to be able to stay on the other side, which I have done on this one. It's not going to move, but I still have area that it can slide back and forth, which I don't want.
Right.
I want it to stay tight on the top. So, you know, I can open it up back here and play. It is bendable wire, so you do have some wiggle room. But again, you're going to make it a point, put it inside of the hole that you cut, and then flatten that so that it can't come back through, and then arrange on the back. Just to keep all of that flat, I do think I'm going to, once I get it all in place, do a fusible just to keep it in place.
Let's turn this around, and then we'll get, since I'm holding the camera here, let's get like close-ups of each of the blocks so that everybody can see how adorable this is.
So this is the windmill. These, you can see on this one here, I have actually done the fringing. So it's like the corn silks.
It's so cute.
It is very cute, but I have to say, I actually kind of like the non-fringed one.
Right.
But since I've done one, I got to do the others. So I'm going to go ahead and fringe these here. This is where you're going to want to change your bobbin thread so that you can see which ones to clip. All right. And then we have the farmhouse, and we have a cute little quilted pillow sitting on the porch swing. You've got vinyl that's going over your windows. And then these are the banners that I was talking about. So they originally stitch face down, pointing this direction, and it tacks it. Then you fold it over and tack yet again to get into that position. Not that it was hard. I just did raise my foot on that section there. And of course, really adorable fireworks.
Right.
In the thread kit, there are 2 reds and there are 2 blues. I use the darker red in the fireworks, and I use the lighter red for the most part in the stitching down here. So it's kind of hard sometimes to say, well, which color do I want where? There are 2 browns as well. So
here's that,
really cute little quilt. This is my envelope fold on the back so that I could do that all right on the machine. Super simple. And like I said, I did actually do quilting lines on the quilt itself. There we go. So look at that. You can actually see my white thread there. Look at that. Here's that black leather that I was talking about. So you have a tire swing here on this side. I have gone back and trimmed these. They stay fuzzy.
Yeah.
There's no way to not have fuzzy there. So I hope you like it fuzzy, because it's not going to be anything different. This truck was actually stitched in 2 different steps. You do the bed of the truck first. I did go in and remove, but there was a basting line that was stitched here that you line up the truck bed with.
Sure.
And so just so that I'm confused, I did do it in the clearly, and that if I forgot to take it out, it would kind of bend.
Right.
Maybe look like the backside of the truck or
definitely
something.
A good idea.
But I did actually remember to go in there and remove that. But this is what I was talking about. You can see that white line, so you can definitely see the 2 different pieces that are there. So just be as careful as you can and get the cut that you're looking for the first time
Look
around.
at that little basket. It's so cute.
I know. I wanted to have a picnic when I sewed that on.
The gas.
And then you have a gas pump. This part here is a button, so you're adding that, and all of that is stitching. Again, all of that leather is going to be tacked down. Oh, hang on, I'm hooked on the
the embroidery module.
Yep. All right. So here's the general store. You are actually going to stitch this as a separate piece and then tack it down. I did use a black bobbin when I was stitching these letters. Look at the little cat on the front porch steps. Oops.
He's so cute.
And again, we have vinyl windows that we used in there. And then here's that bunting. You can pick from either the red and white or the red, white, and blue. So there's a couple different options there. The fireworks are the same everywhere. The red top and white bottom with the opposite on the threads. You can do it however you would like, of course. And then here is the fire station. I did again use black bobbin thread when I was stitching these, just to make sure they came up nice and crisp. And then the Dalmatian puppies poking out the top floor window. And then this is still free and flowy. I just tacked it down to the pole over here. And then you've got a little fire hydrant down there, but there's all of your clock. I did find if you try to go back and fix, it actually makes it worse.
Right.
So just go with what you got. If you try to go back and trim even more, it doesn't really help. And then last but not least is the last little tree. So we have a bike.
Those little balloons, guys, they're so cute.
So I actually painstakingly made sure that I had a white, the glitter in each of those in addition to the Mylar. I was fussing and I kept turning it until I could get it just how I wanted. And then the bow is there as well to hold them on to right underneath the bike seat there.
Yeah.
But you can see how these aren't really tight. I just thought that was really cute in the picture, how they weren't. So I made sure that there was a little excess. So I ran that down. I tacked the string and then the blue pillow. And then I did the same. I ran the twine, tacked it down, and then did the red pillow, and then the same for the white. And I did switch to red so that you wouldn't see a big white spot when I tacked that down. And again, I used the button stitch to actually tack the buttons into something. That is what I attached all of these different pieces with.
Yep. So cute.
It just came out adorable.
So hopefully nobody got seasick while we were moving that camera. But I thought you guys would like to see
the finished product.
The finished product, yeah.
And it did turn out super
cute.
It
did.
So,
it's very, very cute. You did a great job.
Thank you. And we'll get that. I'll have to play with the lights, but we'll get it up on the wall so people can see.
Absolutely. So we ran a little longer than an hour this morning. Does anybody else have any extra questions that we didn't answer for you already? My stomach obviously is hungry.
Sarah's hungry. I was like, that was a question. Can I eat?
Is it time to eat? Right? Apparently my apple did not do anything for me this morning. All right. Well,
I don't see any questions popping up. Oh, what do we got?
Great job.
Very good. You are most welcome. And if you do have questions when you get started, of course, you guys know you can always give us a call, and we're happy to try to help you over the phone as well. So thanks for tuning in, or if you're tuning in later, hope you enjoy it. And we will see you next time, which will be at this point next Tuesday.
Yes, next Tuesday.
All right. You guys have a great week.